Our next presenter at Milrays Park is Ben Aranda from Aranda Lasch, which is an architecture design firm based in Tucson, Arizona, and New York City, led by Benjamin Aranda and Chris Lasch. Their practice is rooted in experimental research and innovative building that deeply investigates structure and materials. Winners of the United States Artists Award and Young Architects Award, their early architecture projects are the subject of the book Tooling. Aranda Lasch is included in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art and is exhibited internationally in galleries and museums, including the Venice Biennale, Museum of Arts and Design, Serpentine Gallery, Chamber Gallery, Swiss Institute, Design Miami, TBA 21, and the Chicago Architecture Biennial. They recently mounted a solo exhibition at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Tucson, which will be on display through January 2017. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here. Rachel is so charming. I really feel like an ogre up here after seeing that presentation. And by the way, the whole day has just been so inspirational. Let me turn off my ringer first. Our project is called Another Circle. The idea with Another Circle is that it's a loose organization of material using discarded limestone. It's organized with the barest presence. It's spread out very thinly over the site. And it's a space that people can use, discover, and enjoy. And it's about making a usable landscape for Columbus. So just a word about Milrays Park. Milrays Park it had a facelift in 1994 by Michael von Balkenburg and Stanley Seidowitz. It's basically defined as a loose collection of trees and a kind of informal planting with these undulating paths. And it's marked by a scattering of architectural structures by Stanley Seidowitz. These architectural structures really mark a place in the park. They're placed in a way that reveals something about the site. For instance, piers, arbors, facilities, overlooks, towers. And they immediately set up maybe one of the first challenges for us, which is that there's already an architectural presence in the site. The paths and the structures lead you up to the main feature, which is the lake, which is this bold, perfect circle. It's mesmerizing, to be totally honest. It's formal. When we were given the tour, we all just went there first and just, were blown away by it. And it really established for us the second real big challenge of the site, which is, what do you do when you're confronted with a 450-foot wide, perfect reflection of the landscape, a massive mirror. So we took a step back and we started to think about, well, how is Columbus Park used by you, the people of Columbus, and just looking at what you put out there on the internet, clearly it's a space of where people come and express their love for each other and commemorate life's important milestones. It's a place of celebration, beer festivals, kids play. Concerts. It's a place where you like to show off, to be totally honest. There's, sports and agility and prowess. There's a place for kids to run around. There's a really great glow-in-the-dark run, 5K run by the kids, which looks amazing. It's a place of animals. I would watch out for that little guy in the middle. And surprisingly to us, it's actually a place where you do commune with nature, but you do it at the river's edge. And there were a lot of photographs about how people were really finding their moments with nature. And it seemed that it was here at the edge of the city, where the city meets the river, that you found your most profound communing with nature. So what is this city? And how does it hit this river? Well, this river is the Flat Rock River. It comes from the north and goes down to the south. It meets the Driftwood River coming in from the west. And the city limits actually hit the park, so the city doesn't actually go into the river. And zooming out, you can see those city limits. And we realized that if we're going to do something meaningful, what we want to do, our first ambition, is to connect the lake and the river. So first ambition. Second part of this project. Okay, so the great thing about this was we got to re-watch Breaking Away, which is a classic coming-of-age film. Watching this film as a child, I was amazed by this landscape, especially in the quarries and the mills that they show, and the landscape in the quarries really showed us that there's a real drama to materials. There's a real drama to how materials are taken out of the earth, and it also shows that there's a way that we can use them as people. There's probably no more dramatic drama than that of limestone. It's exploded out of the rock. It's taken into these mills, sliced and diced, and then it becomes very normal, to be totally honest. It becomes just the world around us. But before it's normal, in these instances, and I think this is the image I'd like you to keep in your mind for our project. Before it becomes normal, it produces this amazing architecture. I mean, look at this image and look at how humans and nature have figured out a way to inhabit this industrial aftermath. And that's something that we're trying to accomplish in this project. So we wanted to look for limestone. We started calling around, lots of calls to see who has any scraps we could use. And it turns out, so we're here in Columbus. This is a geological map of Indiana, and it shows the different colors are the different kinds of limestone coursing right beneath us, actually, even where we sit. And it just shows you that Indiana is limestone. That's just like, keep that. So we called around, and sure enough, there's a stone source called Bybee Stone, which has a storied past. And they're actually, surprisingly enough, outside of Bloomington, which is where Breaking Away was shot. So, and they said, yeah, we have some limestone. Actually, we have a mountain of limestone. And it literally is a mountain. You can see it on the map there. It's about 30 feet tall. It's a few acres wide. And they said, come at it. Like, you can take what you need. We went through this long process of talking about our ideas and what it's about. And I have to say, they were amazing and very sympathetic to what we were trying to accomplish and our objective of using a reused material. And we looked at this mountain, and we made this discovery that, well, it's not garbage. There's actually dimension to these pieces. They're offcuts from the industrial process. They're predictable. They're useful. They're architectural. And so we agreed with Bybee that, look, why don't we save you the trip to the mountain? And why don't we grab the stones before they leave your shop? It's cleaner that way. And they're also, they're more predictable. And so this really defined the second ambition of the project, which is to reuse limestone. And I have to say, I asked Dorian Bybee of Bybee Stone what I could tell you tonight, and he said, well, tell him that we're interested in contributing to this project, that that we like people to learn about this natural resource, and quote, he said, look, we're interested in the public good, and that's why we're supporting this project. So I just want to give a shout out for Bybee. So what do you do with a mountain of refuse? It's like, well, you organize it. Organization creates meaning. This is a image of the artist Richard Long. We started to think that, well, maybe there's an alternate history of the circle in this project. If you look at some of these images from prehistory, Stonehenge, you can see that there's a way that when human beings decide to mark a place in the world, they make circles. These are even contemporary examples like Richard Long, Andy Goldsworthy, even some anonymous people making circles on the beach. That when humans are confronted with the challenge of making a place and connecting with nature, it seems like they'll make circles out of stones. So we said, well, we have a huge circle here. And we have these two ambitions. We want to connect the lake to the river, and we want to use limestone. So what if it's just another circle? What if it's a circle that starts to loop things into it? What if it's a circle that allows for the roads? This is the People's Trail, which is a walking trail that goes around the city. And what if we capture some of the water that's in both the lake and the river? And what if we do it with a lot of refuse? But we have to organize that refuse. We have to be purposeful about it, and we have to be innovative about it. So we built this tool to do this. And we start with just a random loose organization of stones of varying sizes that come out of the shop. Now, with no organization, there's really no use. But we can control density. We can organize the rocks from, say, a tight gathering to a loose gathering. We can control scale, so we can introduce a way to sort them by size on the site. So small ones, large ones. This image here, it's basically a combination of density and scale. So you can see larger ones here, a density gradient going from the left, from the right to the left. We can establish paths through this field, so people can walk on. We can connect different areas. And we can also create attractions, right? We can organize the stones and orient them in the ground so that they begin to face things. And we can also stack. We can stack stone on top of each other, very simply. So we have this this way of using refuse in a purposeful and design environment that allows us to do things with it and to make it occupiable. So this is another circle. It's not a clean circle. It's not a perfect circle. It's a rough circle. And it's a circle that allows many things to happen inside of it. It's a gathering of roughness. It's a scattering of function in the round. And so let's go through those functions. We have a theater. We can play games. There's an area for relaxing. There's a beach and a riverfront. And each of these areas is organized by the most minimal means of either putting this reused limestone in the ground, or stacking it on top of each other, or just leaning it in the ground. So the absolute kind of most minimal way to treat the material. So start with the theater. You know, we're thinking that we could program movie nights here. Maybe small concerts or talks. We could watch Breaking Away. You know, one of the things I always find with these outdoor movies is it's hard on your back after a while. So using this way of making an attraction or orienting the rocks towards a screen, we can make it more comfortable. Games. So people like to stack rocks on each other. It's just what humans do. And so we wanted to create a framework for that and really allow for this participation, and allow people to come in and do it themselves. So it could be this real attraction, and you know, we'll figure out a way to do this safely so that nobody gets hurt, and we'll pick the right stones. Maybe some of the stones have to be adhered to others. But it's really this idea that you open up the composition to allow for participation, and it becomes a kind of more of a collective construction that the community can take part of and really play with. There's actually also, I mean, I didn't know this before, but there are stone balancing artists, and we could invite them to come over and really make some of these. I mean, they're absolutely incredible what they can do with a lot of patience, basically, is that's the name of the game. There's a relaxing area. It's a very loose grid of stool height and table height surfaces. I think when something happens when you sit on a rock, you get very pensive. And this is not just humans, and so we wanted to make a space where, in a very simple way, with just this simple stacking, people can sit around in groups or have picnics, and give them a place to sit down. And the lake. We wanted to make a space where people can discover, a space that really kids can figure out how to use it and enjoy it, and we think there's a way to basically cascade the rocks, the limestone, into the lake, and create basically this beach that's really a bunch of stepping stones. 2 minutes. And then finally we have the riverfront, where it's really the kind of loosest scattering of the circle, where the circle is really barely visible, but we place stones at the river's edge. We see that you, the people of Columbus, like to come to the river edge, and you like to really commune with nature here, and we just want to give you a place to sit down and do that. So this is another circle. It's rough, but I think one of the exciting things about the project for us is how it how it accepts imperfections, and how it allows for this idea of accepting imperfections to build the world anew. So it's a promise of renewal, and it's an architecture that asks for the community to really believe in that. And just by way of conclusion, let me just say that it's also it's an intensely data-driven project. It's kind of like we're these very sophisticated cavemen that have these really good tools for managing these rocks, and we can tell you how much they weigh, how big they are. We can distribute them in all sorts of ways. I can tell you how much they weigh and how many dump trucks it would take to bring them all there. But in conclusion, what do you do when the exhibit's over? You have basically about 15 tons of rocks out there. And we've done installations similar to this before, and it's always quite saddening, the waste that occurs. So what we want to do is reuse the project, reuse the stones. I just want to quickly zoom out and tell you something about that I discovered about your rivers. So you have the Flat Rock River going north and south, and the Driftwood coming in from the west. And actually, it creates this massive watershed that's 80 miles long and 40 miles wide. A watershed means all the water kind of coming into that point. So all of this water hitting this entire area, extending past Indianapolis, comes to Milrays Park, comes right by there. In fact, it's so big, it's bigger than Long Island. And a lot happens in that watershed. There's actually a 20-mile kayak run. This is the only map I could find online, but there's a 20-mile kayak run that starts near Norristown, the jump in, and the pull-out point is Milrays Park, right on our site, right where our circle hits the lake. So we want to make, we thought that what we could do is basically move all the stones to the river edge when we're done. And we leave it there for lasting, permanent value. And that would be something we would work with the Parks and Rec on. And we even think we could introduce some rapids with these stones, so that we catch the kayakers coming down and make sure they don't get swept away. But let me leave it here and tell you that this is really an exciting project for us. It's really it's about reuse. And architects, we all need to be mindful of the environment. That's a given now. And I think even more fundamentally, what this project is about using what you're left with. So it's really a project it's a project for a world that wants to come back together. Thank you.
I seem to be asking all of the quantitative questions today. So you've been modeling this. These are to scale.
Yeah.
How many pieces are there? And what are their largest size?
Okay, we have 2,800 stones. They range from about 27 cubic inches, which is about, say, that big, to about 5 cubic feet, which would be some of the larger ones that go in the river. 5 cubic feet is about, say, this big. But the average size is about 0.3 cubic feet, which is something that 1 to 2 people could carry on their own. And so 2,800 stones, it's about 840 cubic feet. That's about 9 dump trucks worth. And pricing that out, we could probably get, because I think that's where this is going, right? No? Okay.
I'm just a stickler for scale, and you know, your project's fascinating.
Okay.
How long would it take you, do you think, to install it? I mean, that's a performance in itself, no?
It is. I mean, it would involve, well, it takes a village, so I'm taking names right now. No, I think actually, you know, if we had more time for the presentation, what we really wanted to look at was the order of installation, because the way in which you would organize, say, like a cherry picker or even people, I think you could almost imagine it as like as a very large 3D printer, like as a way to organize the logistics. It would be like a large deposition project, but basically with small machines and with a small team of people, we could do it. Yeah.
So your circle is the same exact size as the pond, or is it slightly smaller?
It's slightly. It's a good point. It's slightly smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just trying to visualize whether it's perceptually you can sense the circle of the stones or not, because it's on kind of a slope as well. There are
Yeah.
trees and so forth, and whether that's important to you.
It's honestly, it's. I've never been a big fan of like big formal moves. I mean, I respect them, but as you, I appreciate them. You know, but as you can see, you know, we were really challenged to how to deal with this massive circle, and really the most important thing for us is for people to use the space, and to understand that, you know, using reused limestone. I mean, honestly, it's more than just recycling or reusing. Like for me, the project is about like accepting history, basically. Like all of these offcuts have something to them. This one here, for instance, has some of the spray paint from before it was dynamited out of the quarry. You know, you get that for free when you're dealing with. So.
Am I wrong in thinking that Sadowitz viewing tower isn't that right?
No, yeah. So it's a good point. So the Sadowitz viewing tower is actually down here, but there is a dining pavilion that he did, and I didn't mention this in the presentation, but so Sadowitz was my professor at UC Berkeley, and he was actually my first boss. So my first job out of undergraduate school was with Stanley Sadowitz, and it was right after Milrays was finished. So I didn't mention it, but I will now. The Sadowitz Pavilion is another attraction point. It's a very subtle nod to a professor, or you could see it at like we're sieging. It's like a surround and siege to it. But yeah, that's how we're.
Would you, this may be a really boring question, but do you imagine a linear, meaning direct line, if you will, like your diagram, between the lake edge and the river edge? Do you, in a sense that, would you perceive if one were standing at lake edge and you turned around and you looked across your field, your mirror, your second mirror,
Yeah.
would you understand that then you can walk to the river in a new way?
Yeah, that's. I mean, I actually that's I didn't we didn't think of that. I like that. There, I mean, we have this. So the paths, when we were designing the paths, we had them as these kind of fully paved paths through the field, but it just didn't really feel right. So in the end, we just wanted the paths to be like these kind of wisps that suggests movement through the field. And so there is one that veers off off of the lake and then takes you down to the parking lot, which then takes you down to the launch. So there is like a suggestion of a connection. Again, the formal moves, we appreciate them, but I think we're trying to let people discover other things along the way.
So it looks from this slide, and I don't know if it's more apparent on another slide, but it appears like this disc could be shifted a bit more to the left or to the right. So are there significant, besides the Sadowitz nod, reasons why it's located precisely there, especially given the parking lot as a kind of second attraction?
Yeah. There's essentially this part of the river is really more used. This is a little more overgrown and I would say less of a destination. So we did want to capture if there was a beach that we needed to capture, it was really right here and obviously part of the lake. In imagining its potential reuse, I think we'd want to really figure out how to build these terraces so that they really create that place.
I'm going to take you to task a little bit about your comment about the big formal move. I totally understand what you're saying, but then why did you start with a circle?
I think humans start with circles. It's not even me. I think that it's our way of creating meaning in a place, and it's accomplished through the most elemental of ways. Like, we don't have to be fancy architects to make circles, and what we're trying to say here is that there is a way to do it and keep that elemental quality. And also, I think we're trying to point towards other ways of being, let's say, clear, but without having to be monolithic. Thank you. Thank you.